I've said it before, my eyes are catching up with my age, and light is my new friend. I've been putting lights over some of the equipment in my shop, but now I'm going to make a swinging adjustable light to cover my lathe and my mill. One fixed light really isn't going to do the job. I really need something brighter that I can adjust and position exactly where I need it. This is what I'm using. One 4-foot LED shop light. This one has a chain pull switch on it. 50 inches of 3/4 inch square tubing. Really the length is determined by your shop light. As long as it's long enough to extend an inch or two past the ends, you should be fine. And actually my 4-foot shop light was only 46 inches. Go figure. 1.5 inch by 1/8 inch flat stock. A 4.5 inch half-inch bolt. A 6-inch half-inch bolt. 3 nylock nuts, a couple of half-inch washers, and I'm using 2 3/8 bolts to mount this to my steel building. Now these will also be determined by what kind of building you're mounting it to. If you have a wood structure and you're going into the studs, just some lag bolts should be fine. All of this stuff you can get from your big box home improvement store. Go ahead and cut one piece of your 1.5 inch flat stock to 6 inches. This will be your wall mounting plate. Basically for me on this simple project, I wanted to use a bunch of scrap I had laying around the shop. And the easy button would be to use this 3/4 inch round tubing that has an 1/8 inch wall thickness, which makes it perfect for 1/2 inch bolts. I then weld a spacer on it to move my pivot point away from the mounting base, which that way it doesn't hit it when you're swinging it. But then I figured it might be easiest for you to just go ahead and use the 1/8 inch flat stock for the whole project. So for that design, go ahead and cut 2 more 1.5 inch pieces off your 1.5 inch flat stock. And then round 2 of the corners. Which actually that part's optional. I just think it looks better. Drill a 1/2 inch hole in the center. So 3/4 inch from each side. And deburr the bottom if needed. On the mounting plate, I'm drilling 2 13/32 inch holes, 1/2 inch from each end for my mounting bolts. 13/32 is a 32nd larger than 3/8, so that'll give me a little room to play with. On the 3/4 inch square tubing, drill a 1/2 inch hole, 9/16 inch from each end. Warning, read and follow all labels and your owner's manuals. I've got my Multimatic 220 AC/DC auto set for 14 gauge. Just going to be spot tacking it in. Weld the 4.5 inch bolt in one of those holes. It helps to grind the plating off the bolt where you're going to be welding. This will be the swing point. Then put the 6-inch bolt through the other hole with one of the nylock nuts on the top side. This will be the handle. Take the 2 small pieces with the hole and weld them to the wall mounting plate. 1 3/4 inches from one end and 1 1/4 from the other. I'm using a 1-2-3 machinist block to keep everything square and just welding the insides. I also bumped up the auto set on the Multimatic to 1/8 inch. Now just let that cool so it doesn't warp when I take it apart. At this point I painted it, and I figured out how I wanted to mount my light. Instead of using the chain that came with it, I drilled a 3/32 hole through the square tubing, where the chain would normally mount to the light. And then I'm using 040 stainless safety wire, running it through the light mount up through the tubing and then back around and securing the ends. Also, make sure the chain pull switch is at the swivel end, not the outer end. For mounting to my steel post, I transfer punch the wall mount holes. Then drilled and tapped the holes for a 3/8 bolt. My steel posts are 3/8 thick, so this will be plenty strong enough. To install the light mount, slide the swivel bolt through the top hole. Then run a nylock nut up the bolt far enough so that it won't touch the bottom mount hole, and add a washer. Put the swivel bolt through the bottom hole and secure with another washer and nylock nut. To adjust tension, tighten the upper nylock down to the bottom bracket until it touches it. Then snug up the bottom nylock nut to increase the swivel pressure. Much better.